Welcome back. Let's bring you this important discussion now. Anna Insam was once in a happy, loving relationship with her now ex-boyfriend. However, everything changed in October 1 year. Keagan Troskie has been sentenced to 4 years in prison with the possibility of early release under correctional supervision based on evaluations conducted during his time in prison. He was found guilty of 2 counts of assault with intent to cause grievous bodily harm against Anna. She joins us now as we, of course, mark the 16 Days of Activism campaign, which is being launched today. Anna, thank you very much for speaking to us here on the SABC News Channel. It's really great to be speaking to you as we mark this important moment in our calendar. You've been very vocal about your experience, and I suppose just for the benefit of our viewer, you can let us in on why you've decided to speak out about what happened to you as you let us in on some of the details of your ordeal.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. And it's really exciting to be here on the first day of 16 Days of Activism and talk about such an important topic. And, you know, for me, my journey started as a survivor 4 years ago when I was assaulted by an ex-boyfriend. And it was the first time it had happened in our short relationship of a few months. So it was a very big shock to me. I'd never been in a position like that before. I'd been, you know, privileged to not have had abuse in my home or any abuse against me before that. And, you know, immediately once I went through this ordeal where I was held captive for several hours and went through 2 assaults, I ran straight to the police station, called my father and pressed charges. For me, speaking about this topic is that I'm not ashamed to be a survivor. I feel that, you know, GBV is really not something that should be allowed. It shouldn't be hidden. I think there's so much shame with women who are abused. And for me, I saw it as an opportunity to take back my power, to share my story. And it really opened up for me how large this issue was. And it was something I was unaware of prior to this. And this led to a 4-year journey for me of finding justice.
Absolutely. And this is an opportunity, I suppose, for us to also shine a spotlight on the many other misconceptions that are out there. Before we get to that, you speak about being held captive for some time, but my understanding is that your ex-boyfriend was acquitted of kidnapping. What happened there?
Yes. So essentially what occurs in the court is that you press charges against somebody. So initially the charges were common assault. Once my evidence was reviewed, there were WhatsApps, there were photographs, there were witnesses that had heard me screaming in the middle of the night, and all of this evidence added up along with the J88 that showed the extent of my injuries. So when the prosecutor reviewed this, we were able to move the case into regional court, and the charges were upgraded to attempted murder, assault GBH, and kidnapping. When you go through a trial, of course, we present evidence in front of the magistrate. The magistrate needs to be able to be certain beyond a reasonable doubt that, you know, this actually has occurred. And unfortunately, we weren't able to prove kidnapping because I didn't have any evidence for that, which is really difficult because I certainly know that I was held against my will for those 8 hours. And I think those are just the limitations of these sort of court cases.
Yeah, and I suppose this is a great opportunity to speak about that legal process. I mean, many activists have told us just how draining, arduous, and sometimes expensive it can be. What was your experience like?
I think from immediately going to the police station the day of the assault, they acted very quickly to have my abuser arrested. So within, I would say, 2 to 3 hours, my abuser was arrested of laying the charge. I already felt the issues that arose when I tried to open the case. They asked me about 5 times if I really wanted to open the case. And I think a lot of women would leave at that point because you're already basically not being believed, or you're already being put off from going through that experience. So, you know, that was really difficult, I think, starting off when I was very certain, yes, I absolutely want to go ahead with filing these charges. And I then went got my J88 form. And when I got my J88 form, that really just gives you medical merit to the injuries you've sustained, which can be used in court. And that was a very important document that I then used to get a permanent protection order the following day, which was quite an easy process of applying, but I then had to go to court, which lasted about 2 years, to actually have that permanent protection order made permanent. So initially they just give you an interim order, and it's a restraining order essentially that that person is unable to contact you, call you, be within a few hundred meters of you, etc. So it offers you protection while you're going through these certain cases. And then my case for the criminal side, that took 2 years to get started. So, my assault happened on the 25th of October in 2020, and it's now 2024, and the case only ended a month ago. So it really took a long time, and it is extremely grueling to go through the civil process for your protection order, as well as the legal process from the criminal side. The burden of evidence is on the survivor. No one is there to really help you. You must organize all of the information that proves why someone should be found guilty. And it's a huge burden for a survivor to carry when you've gone through this life-altering situation that is extremely emotionally and physically exhausting. So it is really, really difficult. So, it is correct that it is a challenge. It's not an easy road, but it is a worthwhile road for those who do embark on it.
Yeah, you speak about that burden of proof being on the victim. And, what further complicates the situation is that as you endure the abuse, the last thing on your mind is ways in which you could collect evidence that will stand the test of time in court, which makes this even more complicated.
Exactly. And I think, that's why I like to speak about my case so much, is because if we are better educated as a society, as a husband, as a friend, as a sister, when someone is going through the situation, we will make sure that they do the right things. And that one thing that most people should take away from today's conversation is the J88 form. So you go to the hospital, you go to the emergency room or the clinic or a doctor, and they will fill out a form actually noting your injuries. Without that, you can't just say, well, here's a photo of my injuries. Because in court, they'll say you edited those images, or, you're not telling the truth. So it's so important to have that option of that J88 form that a doctor has signed, because they can come and testify that your injuries were real and that the assault did happen based on your injuries. So that's really, I think, why it's so important that we are all educated and speak about this openly, so that we can be part of the change, even if we're not actually a survivor ourselves.
Absolutely, because I imagine part of what really helped with you as well was the support that you might have gotten along the way, especially at moments where, it felt a bit difficult to keep going. Speak to us about that, Anna, and, the difference that it was able to make for you.
I think the support really, number one, was just being believed. I think people really misunderstand how much that can have an impact on a survivor's healing journey. So from day one, when a week after my assault, spoke out on social media that I was a survivor and that I was going to pursue justice, everybody believed me. And potentially it's the character and it's the fact that they knew me in some way. But I think it's a really big issue when women are not believed. We hear all of these cases and we give, I think, too much benefit of the doubt. And of course, not every woman who says that she has been abused is truthful. That is the reality, and it's a pity, because it makes it more difficult for the rest of us. But it is just really, really important that speaking about it in that way, and that we're sharing, and that we are survivors, and that we're being celebrated for that strength to come forward. So I think that is really step one, which as a community is important. The other support, I would say that the prosecutor in my case, who was representing me and actually driving the case forward in criminal court, was incredible. And I was also able to really have support from my family and access to legal resources. I'm under no illusion that I'm not privileged. When I came to deal with the situation, to have a loving home, to have options, and to have resources. You mentioned earlier the burden of finances. Civil is going to cost you, whereas going through the criminal case, you've got a prosecutor, and all of these things are very difficult. So having that support system from your community, from your workplace, from your friendships, all add up to really just supporting you on the days that are hard. You know that you're doing this for the human rights of other women who will walk after you, but also for yourself. And you always need a bit of a pick-me-up, when those days are hard.
Absolutely. I know there's also real difficulty for a lot of people with the idea of having survived an abusive relationship. You touched, for example, on issues to do with shame. How did you work past that, especially for women who are worried that this is something that might be a stumbling block for them?
I think this is such a difficult one. For myself, prior to my assault, I spent many years working on myself and coming to a place where I respect myself. I feel confident in who I am. I know my boundaries, what I will accept in a relationship, what I will not. So I think when you're entering a relationship from that position of strength, it's a lot easier when something like gender-based violence occurs to say this completely goes against everything that I stand for and I cannot stand for it. So it was a lot easier for me to immediately say, no, I will not stand for this. And after that, I think I just knew that what had happened to me had happened to me. It wasn't something that I had chosen to be a part of. And as soon as I could leave, I obviously chose to. But I do recognize that, a lot of women are not in that same position. And so, of course, always work on your self-worth and those things, because I think you'll make different decisions. But I think seeking emotional support through therapy or support groups is really, really important, because I think it builds that inner strength. If you haven't gone into the relationship with that in the first place, that enabled you to leave, that is that little fire inside you that if you can get that flame, you'll be able to find that self-worth again and find that strength and shed that shame. I think society tells us to be ashamed. I, as a survivor, am telling women we don't have to be ashamed. It's the abusers who need to be ashamed of their actions.
Absolutely, loud and clear. And thanks very much indeed for speaking to us and helping us shed light on what is sometimes an incredibly difficult story to tell. Anna Insam, of course, a survivor of gender-based violence, speaking to us about her own experience as we mark the first day of the official launch, or at least the first day of this campaign, 16 days of activism of no violence against women and children. The Deputy President, by the way, is going to launch the official commemoration, if you like, in Rustenburg in the Northwest. As soon as he starts speaking, we'll bring you some of those sentiments. That and more of the day's top stories